Good evening, everyone. This is the September meeting of Swing Left Peninsula. We're a chapter of Swing Left National in the San Francisco Bay Area. We have a packed agenda, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for coming. If you could go to the next slide, please. We'll go through the agenda real fast. Okay, as always, our first agenda item is to sign up for our next meeting, the last meeting before Election Day on October 15th. The link's in the chat. We're really thrilled to have our special guest today as the Executive Director of Swing Left National, Yasmin Raji. I'll introduce her in 1 second. And then Yasmin will speak for about 20 minutes. We'll have about 5 minutes time for questions. If you could hold your questions or put them in the chat. And then we have a lot of organizing and action updates. When we finish going through those, we'll end the formal meeting and you're welcome to stay and chat with the leaders. We'd love to hear what's on your mind. And now, if I'd like to introduce Yasmin Raji, we're really incredibly thrilled to welcome her. She's a native of Palo Alto, and she joined Swing Left. She's the executive director of Swing Left National. Again, we're one little chapter, and there's probably, I don't know, 100 plus chapters across the country. She joined Swing Left from a political appointment in the Biden administration in early to mid 2022. And if you all recall, that was when in the grassroots, we were kind of staring down the red wave. We weren't important yet. No one had heard of us. We didn't get any validation. And I sort of imagine, Yasmin, that your peers were probably a little like flummoxed that you would decide to go leave this appointment and, join the Democratic grassroots. It's worked out really well for us, for Swing Left. I hope it's worked out well for you personally. But I really believe that you took what was a really scrappy startup and have fortified it and built it and matured it for the long haul. And the long haul's here, right? So early voting started yesterday in Pennsylvania. It starts in the 20th in Virginia. And Yasmin, thank you for coming and girding us for what's coming in this first part of the long haul leading up to Election Day. So I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Laura, for a warm introduction. And I've been looking forward to this call ever since Laura reached out, not only because Swing Left Peninsula is my home chapter and the home of, I see my childhood pediatrician on this call. So shout out to Harry Dennis. I see my former Odyssey of the Mind coach, Susan Dennis, on the call. My parents are joining. I don't know if they're on the call. One of my family members, who Laura also knows, is on the call. So this is my home turf. My parents' next door neighbor, I know, is an active leader with Swing Left Peninsula. So you all, I don't pick favorites, but it's really hard to say no to anything that Swing Left Peninsula does because you all are my people. So I'm just really, really thrilled to be here. And then on a less personal note, on just objective numbers, you all are a powerhouse. And so everything that Swing Left Peninsula does is always shouted out at the national level. You all are the model of really amazing organizing. And the numbers are that story. That is no personal bias here. I was just talking with the leaders right before this call started. You've written 634,000 letters through Vote Forward. I mean, just astronomical scale. You are the single largest letter writers in the country last election cycle, breaking 700,000, which I think you're going to far exceed that, this cycle. But just really incredible stuff. And not only that, but you've also been a real model of how to do sort of multi-pronged activism of letter writing, canvassing, phone banking, coalition building, working with other groups, and also raising money for candidates in really creative ways. So just thank you for all that you do every day. It is an honor to be here. And also, you're one of my favorite things to look at on my dashboard because it just is a sign of all the great work that you're doing every day that's making a real difference. So with that, Laura, I think queued us up really well. We're at 49 days left until Election Day, which is both horrifying and exciting. As Laura said, voting's already started, right? So early voting started in Pennsylvania already. It starts in 2 days in Wisconsin. There's a whole bunch of other places where it's starting soon. So as one of my mentors used to always remind me, Election Day is the last day to vote. It is not the first day of voting. And so the work that you're doing is literally can be the decision, can be the reason why someone makes the decision to vote or not vote, or to vote Democrat or not, as of right now. So it's really, we've moved past theory and very much into the reality of this election. And we all know how much is at stake here. So I was thinking about sort of where to start here, and I don't think you all need to hear from me that we're all really excited because it's obvious. I've got my Kamala sign in the background. I think a lot of you all were in Chicago with me at the convention. I think we've read about 65 million think pieces about why we're all so excited. I'm not going to psychoanalyze us all, but it feels great. It feels great to be excited, and obviously you all have been channeling that excitement into action. But I think there's a few things that are really on my mind in the sort of pangs of anxiety that still exist in between all of the excitement. And that is first and foremost that it's not just that a lot is at stake for the presidential. We also have an absolutely existential mandate to win the Senate and the House. I know that you all know that, and you've been knocking on a whole bunch of doors in some essential races on the House. A bunch of you all in partnership with the Bay Area Coalition have been schlepping all the way over to Nevada to make sure we're securing that Senate race as well. But we all know that. And I just want to remind us all, because we're so in the work that sometimes we like forget why we're doing this. But when we're talking about the Senate and just like taking a moment, I know you all know this and you probably read more magazines and news articles than I do every single day. But when we are talking about the future of the court, and when we are talking about our sort of late night conversations of, is Gretchen Whitmer going to run this part of the administration? And is Pete Buttigieg going to be our next Secretary of State? None of that, none of our dreams are possible if we have an obstructionist Senate. And we all know, I don't think we need to think very hard about just how obstructionist a Senate that will be a more extreme version of a Mitch McConnell Senate, because he's out. So God only knows who's going to be taking his place there. But we all know what the Merrick Garland fight was, and we all know that we will have probably one or two Supreme Court justices who move on from their roles in this next administration, and we cannot play games. We cannot play games with the future of our democracy if we don't win the Senate. And then the House, you all know, legislatively, we need the House. We needed to hold Donald Trump accountable if, God forbid, he wins. We also needed to just get big things done. So we all know that, but we've got to like remind ourselves every day, particularly because you all know that, but the people in your networks may not. And so grounding ourselves as much as we can in the why matters a lot. And so that's the other place that I just wanted to start us before we get into the weeds of which districts, which states, how aggressively are we moving in this new moment, is I think we've all read, again, probably another 65 million pieces on polarization since 2016. We know we live in a really polarized country. We know that you all live in a beautiful island called the Peninsula where polarization is felt, but in really great ways. There's not a lot of hardcore Trumpies near us in the Peninsula, although I'm calling from Washington, D.C. here. But for me, what's been actually a much more helpful and orienting way of thinking about 2024 is not polarization, but calcification, which Judith and Laura and others on the call have heard me talk about a lot. It's what a lot of political scientists are writing about. It's sort of a more extreme version of polarization. And it is why, even in this moment where sort of the clouds have, the stars have aligned, the change at the top of the ticket has given us all this renewed energy and hope, et cetera, it is leading to some great changes in the electorate. But it's not like all of a sudden, oh, we're going to win this election, this is no contest. This is going to be a really close election. And this is going to be a close election that is probably going to be so close that we are not going to know the results until a few days after the election. And what that means, knowing who Donald Trump is that we are probably at risk for all sorts of things if the votes are not decisively on our side and if it's close, because we all know what he did last time and he is that much more emboldened this time. So I'm starting there because when we have calcification of just real rigidity in our politics, real giant sea change events happen, like Kamala Harris becomes the nominee in a historic way, and most voters are still either really rigidly staying where they are partisan. I don't think anyone on this call is in any way going to be persuaded at any moment in time to vote for Donald Trump, right? We are calcified heavily, but also people who are feeling really rigid in their decision to not vote. This is part of, there's just very few people who are not really, really rigid in our electorate. And I'm starting there because what that means is all of the work, every hour, every dollar, it has to be laser focused on the very, very, very small number of people who are not calcified. who can vote for a different party for the House, even if they're voting for Donald Trump at the top of the ticket in California, who can move to the Democratic side, or who can choose to vote for the first time despite not feeling like that was their original decision. And all of that, again, like you'll read an Atlantic article probably tomorrow and a New Yorker piece next week and so on, sort of talking about that. But what that means for this work, and what this means also for your friends who've not yet gotten on the sidelines, is calcification existed before Joe Biden dropped. It will exist after Kamala Harris becomes our president. But what it means is when a shift happens, like Kamala moves to the top of the ticket, the specific small number of people who are not calcified is not the exact same people. It's still a really small number, but it's a little different with a Kamala at the top of the ticket, even for a California House race. Things have just shifted. And we've had less time to figure out exactly who those people were. So the data that told us these are the people, the non-calcified small number of voters in California's 13th congressional district, or the small number of non-calcified voters in Nevada who could be the difference between whether Jackie Rosen wins or not, it's just a slightly different group of people, right? It's a little less female. It's a little less young, right? And so we've got fewer days. We're 49 days out from the election. We have fewer days to figure out exactly who those people are. And we've got brilliant people on the campaign who are running numbers and data. But the work that you all are doing when you go and phone bank and get hang up after hang up after hang up and are like, why on earth am I doing this instead of just going and having a cocktail? That one phone call that picks up and that person maybe hangs up on you and says, I'm voting for Donald Trump, boom, is really actually important, not just in the specific of that person is now off the list, no one's going to call them. It is also really important because more than any other election cycle, the data is a little bit confusing because we've just had fewer days to talk to voters. So I'm saying that because in an election that is going to come down to the margins, and we know that it is, right? The 2020 election on the presidential level came down to 43,000 votes in 3 states. So it was about just over 10,000 votes in Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona. That's nothing, right? That's what we call a field margin. That's how many calls, how many canvases, how many dollars that just sort of let a few down ballot candidates get on television at the very end. That's what that comes down to. And then in 2022, the House came down to 6,675 votes. I mean, that's like a rounding error. And then you all know this better than anybody because Adam Gray, you're sort of, I want to say hometown, but I guess an hour and a half drive is not hometown, but whatever, your closest swing district, less than 500 votes, which I know you all know in your bones. That is literally the difference of a swing left peninsula having all of your neighbors and friends joining you as volunteers versus not, right? Like that is really a marginal victory. And so not only do we know that organizing and the only tactics that we focus on in organizing are the ones that we can prove work. That's why letter writing, phone banking, especially later in the cycle, and canvassing are all we do. Dollars going to those really critical races are all we do because the election is going to come down to the margins, and we need the strongest number of voter contacts as early as possible so that we can better understand in those final 4 days of the election when we've got to just surge, get out the vote, and you all are going to be on buses going out to Reno and the Central Valley and so on to go talk to those final swath of voters that haven't voted early. We've got to make sure we're talking to the right ones. And so the more work that you're doing now, and you all are at the tip of the spear of this, the easier that final stretch is going to be. So that's, I think, what is overall grounding me. And then with 49 days out, we really don't have a lot of room for error. And so there's 2 things that we're doing. One is we are focused on what we call our immediate impact campaign. And for those of you who've been active with Swing Left for a while, this is familiar to you, which is in the final stretch, basically that post-Labor Day till Election Day stretch, both on the organizing side and on the fundraising side. And that's all we do at Swing Left is direct time and money to the most impactful races. We focus on a week-to-week basis, are things changing in a way where a dollar actually goes further in a different district than it would have last week? And we are updating our website with that information on a weekly basis for fundraising. And on the organizing side, we are sort of at a higher level directing maybe to a different field office, maybe to a different race. And then folks like you all, like your amazing Swing Left Peninsula leadership team that is among the most sophisticated leadership teams of our Swing Left groups in the country, is then translating that information into what does that mean for us locally? Because you all are obviously not going to schlep over to Bucks County, Pennsylvania every weekend, but you've got a few options of where you go in Adams Gray's district, in Rudy Salas's district, a little schlep further down, and then of course in Nevada. And that immediate impact is so that if someone says to you, listen, I can't really do much right now, but I could the Saturday before the election, I can help. Where do I go? That you all have the most up-to-date information of this is exactly where they're going to be able to have the biggest impact. So that is sort of like how we're thinking about things, immediate impact in this final stretch. And how do we make sure everyone who wants to get involved finds it as easy to do and as good of an experience to do, regardless of whether they're a total political junkie or someone who feels really nervous about participating for the first time. Those can be equally effective canvassers, equally effective phone bankers. In fact, sometimes people who are less of a political junkie are more persuasive on the doors because they're sort of less in their heads about how to talk about the economy or abortion because they're just listening to a voter, right? So how do we make it as easy as possible for people to participate? And then the map really matters, right? And so we talked about the importance of the Senate and the House and the presidential. I don't think you all need to hear from me how important the presidential is, but we're focused. And for those of you who've been active with Swing Left, you've heard us talk about this a lot, which is the super state, we call our super state strategy. So the 12 states where, a place like Nevada, if you go out and knock on doors for a House candidate in Nevada, it's also really important for the Senate. It's also really important for the presidential. And turns out there's also some key state races. So where are the 12 states that are important for winning a federal trifecta and also for winning some key state level races that are going to be essential from a national standpoint? And what I mean by national standpoint is if you have a Republican trifecta in a state like Wisconsin, that is going to impact the integrity of a national election like the presidential. Because if an election comes down to a few thousand votes, you better believe Republicans controlling an entire state is something that's very risky for us, just for the integrity of our democracy. So that's what we mean by state races that matter nationally, are places that could impact the national balance of power. So 12 super states, that includes the 8 states that every time you turn on cable news, you're going to be hearing about, the 8 presidential states. So that's Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. This is going to be on a slide later, so don't worry if I said that too fast. You will be hearing this more tonight, and also it's very easy to find on our website. And those are the states we need to win the presidency. If you are really good at math, which I am not, you will see that those are more than the 270 votes. There's different pathways to victory across those 8 states when you add in the obvious blue states like the Californias and New Yorks and so on. But we need to win most of those. And there's a few different ways that we can win depending on sort of like which states end up moving to our side versus not. But that's where we got to focus. Those will always be the presidential states in this election. Those are not changing no matter what changes at the top of the ticket, even with any big crises. Those did not change from Biden to Kamala. They will not change probably for the foreseeable future, even beyond this election. There are also 2 states that we have to win for the Senate, and that's Montana and Ohio. That's really important to call out because those are 2 of the 3 states in the country where the senator is from a different political party than how that state voted. So what that means, Montana is 1000% going to go for Donald Trump. We can take that one to Vegas, right? The question is, are people going to vote for Donald Trump and break away from their party with John Tester? And again, in a heavily calcified electorate where people are really rigid, that's really hard to do. And so we have a lot of work to do in places like that. And then we have, and obviously this is our focus with this group, the 2 states that are essential for the House, and that's California and New York. California and New York are absolutely essential. And I know you all know this, but a lot of people don't know this, and I'm constantly surprised at how few people know this. We cannot win the House without California and New York. We can't win, the math doesn't work. These are the most important states in the country for the House. And something I hear constantly, including from very sophisticated people who read the New York Times cover to cover is, man, I live in California. I really wish I could make a difference, but I'm too far away, right? I'm sure you all hear that from your friends, your family, your neighbors as well. And that's why your work is so important, because having people get the mental leap to the imagination that they actually have agency to not just read and panic watch MSNBC about the election, but to drive 90 minutes away to help elect Adam Gray, or drive a couple more hours away to elect Jackie Rosen in the presidential, or Rudy Salas down in this a little bit further south from you all. That is so essential in what you all are doing when you are tabling, when you are marketing, when you are doing all the work that you're doing with your networks. And the other really good news is we're in such strong shape, even though these races are going to come down to incredibly small margins, like probably a few hundred votes, like Adam Gray had last time, is just under 500 votes. But we are feeling pretty bullish on being able to expand our map. So this is not a secret, but not New York Times ready news, which is we are expanding our map. We can't really expand it for the Senate yet. We're not going to expand it for the presidential. We are going to be expanding it on the House side. And that includes 2 additional districts, not near the Bay Area, but important for California, representing California. And that is we are expanding 10 additional races. Some of these you'll notice we're already fundraising for on our immediate impact fund. So that's taking one step back, we have 17 districts that we want to hold in the House, right? Democrats were very vulnerable. We have 15 races that we want to flip from red to blue. So these are races in many cases that are occupied by a Republican, but that voted for Biden. Okay, so these have been, if you've been active with Swing Left, you've been seeing us talk about these folks since I think April. These are our ride or dies. Adam Gray is on that list. Rudy Salas is on this list, et cetera. Those are your closest 2 districts for folks who are new. But the 10 additional targets that we're adding on there, and that's 4 districts that we think we can flip from Republican control, 6 that we need to hold for Democrats. This is our bet that the House is looking better, way better than the Senate. We're hoping to make the Senate a little better, but we just cannot take anything for granted in the House. And so we need to be walking and chewing gum and making sure that if there is a scandal that happens in one of these districts, we've got a backup plan. And so the 2 California races that we're adding on are Will Rollins in California, California's 41st. I see Judith is happy about that one. Dave Min in California, 47. That's a hold. And again, we've started to fundraise for these folks. So if you feel really excited, you could write them a check right now. And I know that our Swing Left Peninsula team will make sure that you've got the right links and so on. But we also are going to start organizing for them really soon. So there will be a more formal announcement. But I'm saying that for this group for 2 reasons. One is I want you all to understand in your bones, not just in your minds, that the reason why we are in really strong shape on the House is not because of just like esoteric winds of the political winds that have been blowing around. It's because of the work that's been happening. I mean, this group, I remember the maddest that you all have been at me, at least to my face, has been when I was like, we're going to do Win Back the House plan. And I'm so excited. We're going to do it really early. And you all were like, early? That's way too late. We got to start working right now. And this was back in January of the off year. You all are monsters in the best way of like, you don't want to have an hour go by that is not being invested towards winning back the House. And because of that work, because of that early fundraising, that early organizing that you all have not taken your foot off the gas for a second, that is why we're actually able to expand our House map and make sure that we are ready for whatever political tides end up sort of swaying some things out of our control. Now, the second reason I'm saying that is because your lane remains really clear. You have 2 races near you. And again, many of you all know the geography way better than I do. Adam Gray is still, he needs you. Without you, he is not going to win, right? It's going to be a Swing Left Peninsula Bay Area coalition margin in that race. For those of you who've not gone out there or not called there, I know this team is going to make sure that you're put to work. And then Rudy Salas, that I want to mention in California 22, I think that's probably like a 3.5 hour drive. It's certainly more of a schlep, a great, beautiful weekend retreat to go and explore a new part of California. But because it's more of a schlep and sort of between you all and then our Southern California groups, He's getting a little less love on the weekends in terms of canvassing and voter contact, and he's just a little further behind in reaching voters. So mentioning that, and then of course you all are going to stay focused on Nevada, but Swing Left Peninsula is also the hub of a lot of donors who are not going to go and knock on doors with you all. Maybe, and then once letters run out, they're not going to have much to do necessarily if they're not phone bankers either. So we'll make sure that you've got the full map, including those additional races, so that dollars can also make a big difference in those. So I'm just going to close with two anecdotes, and then I'll kick it back to the Swing Left Peninsula leadership team. And that is, we know this is going to be a close election. We know that this work is going to be the difference. Whether we organize or don't, whether we raise money or don't, is going to be when we see those final countdowns, whether we have won or lost is going to come down to this work, right? And work works if it is focused on the right tactics in the right places. If we just sort of like frantically do stuff that doesn't do anything, we might feel better in the moment and we're going to feel exhausted and really bad when we lose, right? So like it's got to stay really focused, and you all know that and are the model of that nationally. But I think I met with one of our target candidates, Janelle Bynum, up in Oregon. For those of you who have friends and family up there, amazing candidate. And her mother lives in DC. So they have every morning a 5:30 a.m. phone call to catch up before the day gets really hectic. And at 5:15 a.m., her Act Blue releases her fundraising from the night before. So at 5:15, she looks at how much money she's raised. And at 5:30, she talks to her mom. And she said, it is so amazing to meet someone from Swing Left because every morning at 5:15, I just see this flood of money that I did not ask for, that I did not have to fly to a fancy fundraiser to make happen, that I did not have to leave my district to go, in a district that's going to come down to the margins where I've got to take time in my rural turf. I've got to take time talking to voters who don't feel like voting matters to them. She's like, I can go talk to those people. I didn't have to leave my district to go raise this money. She's like, every morning I talk to my mom and I'm like, I don't even know who these people are. And they just keep giving me money. And what that means for her is that she is then able to spend that time in her district that I've never been to the state of Oregon. I could not tell you how to reach voters in Bend. She knows, right? And so those dollars are then helping her to do that work, reach those voters that she knows as someone who's been living in that district, who knows it backwards and forwards. And it's allowing her to communicate with those people. And she said, the two issues that are top of mind for people are wildfires and reproductive freedom, right? Those are obviously very familiar to you all in the Bay Area and in California as well. And so for her to be able to go out and get up on television, to message to people digitally with those dollars that she, again, can stay in her district for is a fundamental difference. And what that all adds up to, we got an email from another one of our candidates earlier this week saying he was 11% above his goal for his fundraising, which allowed him to then do an extra town hall in his district because of the small dollar donations from Swing Left. And so I know that sometimes you all are such incredibly sort of type A people who want to do always the best and just be sort of like are often tougher on yourselves than anyone could possibly imagine, of like, I've got to do more, I've got to write more letters, I've got to do more calls. But what it's adding up to is not just marginal, it's really significant. And these candidates are talking to Swing Left as though we are, one of the donors who gets named in the New York Times as like one of the big wigs of whatever, because you all have stayed so focused that you are raising collectively sometimes $300,000, $400,000 for these candidates. And that is literally whether they have staff or not in these elections. So I'm going to close with that, with a lot of gratitude. 49 days out. Thank you for directing your time and your dollars to these critical races. Thank you for doing it early and for now being sort of strong closers. And I think my ask for each of you is to recruit 1, 2, 3, whatever the right number is for you, people who've not participated before. You all keep growing every time I join one of these calls. There's new faces. But it is, I again continue to be surprised at how many people want to do something. And in this moment of excitement, they are hearing a lot of noise and they're not quite sure what that means for them. And so bring them along because you never know if they could be actually the difference in one of these races. So thank you. And I'll pass it back to Laura.
Yasmin, that was just fabulous. And I'm going to take the prerogative of the leader here. And I'm going to skip over everyone else's questions because we're a little short on time, but I wanted you to maybe spend 30 seconds telling us something we don't usually hear about, which is how are your own staff feeling? Like what's the atmosphere like in Swing Left now? Um,
Yeah,
it's always a slog, and I'm just curious, like, how is it going there?
it's a great question. I think it's the highs are sky high. I mean, I really don't think I worked on the 2008 Obama campaign, and I don't remember a time where the level of sort of like deep joy, like full body joy, has been as high as it was in 2008 until now. Like it's a level of hope and imagination about what's possible that even the most like cynical, beat it down by the beltway people, both at Swing Left and in our partnership world, are just like imagining sort of whatever the legislative equivalents of rainbows and unicorns are, right? Like it feels so good and it feels like anything is possible. And I think the two things that are happening at the same time is like we just can't. In 2008, I didn't really think that much about losing. Like I thought about losing because I'm competitive and I don't like losing elections, but I wasn't like, oh, if we lose the election, like nothing will be possible. And it is emotionally really a heavy burden to know
Mhm.
it's not like we'll just get worse policies. It is just like the stakes are so high. And we've got, a Haitian American staffer who for the past 2 weeks, it's just like, what on earth are we talking about here? I mean, it's just like there is a real heaviness that is coupled with that hope that is different. And I think there's another piece here, which is we all feel a real pressure that I think probably a lot of you all do too, which is how do we make sure we're not squandering this moment, right? Like this is a moment where so many people who activated for the first time in 2008 are the people who are now running the Democratic Party, who got active are now running giant organizations like you all, right? And so how do we make sure that we are opening the door wide enough to let people in and to bring them along while we're sprinting? Because how we show up for these next 49 days is not just going to certainly for the next 2 years, but also for the next like generation of political and democratic work, small d and big D democratic work. So I think it's both. It's hope. It's a little bit of doom because of how big the stakes are. And it's also this, I think, healthy pressure of how do we make sure that every opportunity to seize this moment we are taking and we are not sort of losing our ambition and our imagination for how many buses we're going to have that weekend, who we could connect with that we've not connected with before, and how do we get everyone from volunteers and donors to celebrities and candidates and so on to be maximizing their impact in this moment. So thanks for the great question, Laura.
So one of the best organizers I know says that politics isn't a sprint or a marathon, it's a relay. And like I said, we're in this for the long haul, and the way that we're winning, the way that we're going to win also matters. So thank you for talking about the small dollar donors, backing up those candidates. That's how we get, that's how we not only win and save our democracy, but we really get the country that we want, is that we are building it over a long haul. So Yasmin, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. We're going to now turn to all the opportunities that you have,
Thank you.
everyone here has, to do the work. So I'll turn it over to my colleague, Bruce.
Yeah, hi. So, Yasmin, thank you so much for inspiring us and inspiring me, and also emphasizing how important it is even now to be donating to certain key races. And so I pulled up our donation link, which focuses on CA 13, CA 22, as well as some groups in Arizona and Nevada. And I just put it in the chat. So if you're inspired the way I've been inspired and understand the importance of money and donating now, I'm really happy to provide that opportunity to everyone. So please go in and take a moment to donate. Just real briefly, anyway, we focus on Nevada, Arizona, and California, and enough said about that. Another thing that we show people every one of these meetings is sort of the yellow line of progress. We started out in March or so, and it's been moving month by month. And now that vertical yellow line shows us where we are on the election cycle, and we are entering get out the vote season. And you're going to hear a lot more about those details coming up, including how to be really effective locally. So, and honestly, I don't know who's next. Who's on next?
I'm next. So,
Okay, Laura.
in the spirit of the relay, we're going to talk about why it's important to vote early and some efforts that we've made to sort of broaden our coalition and get that message out. So first of all, voting early is our superpower. Democrats have many more irregular, infrequent voters than the other side does. The more effort we can put in to get out the vote, the more votes we get in the end. And when you vote early, you take your name off that voting roll immediately, and the campaign doesn't, and us, we, the volunteers doing the door knocking, don't have to spend any time getting you to turn out to vote because you've already voted. In California, we all vote by mail. We're all going to get a vote by mail ballot mailed to us on October 7th. Be ready to fill it out by filling out the sample ballot you'll get 2 weeks beforehand. And then tell everyone you know. Imagine everyone doing that all across the country when their early vote date starts and sharing the word. And we wanted, at Swing Left Peninsula, really wanted to get that message out beyond our own demographic, which tends to be older and whiter. So we decided to make some videos for the TikTok generation. If you could go to the next slide. So we've made short videos that you can share on Facebook, on Instagram. You can email them. Email works great to get the word out. We're going to play one, and we have videos made specifically for each state. So this is the California video in English.
Hey, Californians. This fall, there's an easy way to send voter turnout sky high. Vote early, starting October 7th. When you're an early voter, campaigns won't call or canvass you before the presidential elections. You've already voted, so your name will be off their target lists. Instead, they'll contact irregular voters, driving much bigger turnouts before November 5th. To find out when and where you can be an early voter, pause and screenshot this handy early voting
You
cheat
can stop
sheet.
there, Bruce. So each one of the state videos has the state-specific information on this screen. And then all of these videos are also available in Spanish. And we're just going to play like 5 seconds of the California one so you can see it.
Hola, gente de California. Este otoño hay una manera fácil de mandar la participación electoral por las nubes. Vota anticipadamente a partir del 7 de octubre.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Bruce. So we want to bring more young people into our coalition. We want to communicate with the Latino voters in our coalition. There's tons, obviously, Nevada, Arizona, and California, tons of Latino voters that we want to reach. So we've made these materials and made them available. The links for sharing them will be in the chat and so on and so forth. So that's part of organizing, right? The more we vote early all across the country, spread the word, the easier our get out the vote job is going to be at the doors and on the phones. But before we get to the doors and the phones, we're going to talk about letters. Yasmin mentioned that Swing Left Peninsula, if you could go to the next slide, Bruce, has written 634, has adopted, I should say, 634,000 letters. These letters that we're talking about are letters that go to voters to encourage them to vote. So there's a pre-printed template, if you haven't written with us yet. The writing in black is the pre-printed template, and then the writing in blue is what you add as the volunteer, a short handwritten message encouraging people to vote. The letter has information about how to vote, the choices on the ballot in the particular area you're writing to. We're mailing letters. We've been writing all year. We started in March. As soon as letters were available, we'll be mailing through the month of October. And if you could go to the next slide, please. You can pick up letters from us at 9 locations on the peninsula. You can go to a letter party. All of that's available at our letters website. The address is in the lower left there. And starting this weekend, we have in-person parties on Sunday afternoons at the Democratic Volunteer Center. This is the temporary space. Those are pictures on the left of the Democratic Volunteer Center. I think it was a Best Buy or something like that. It's a huge cavernous warehouse where you could fit hundreds or even thousands of people. And we'll be doing in-person letter parties there on Sunday afternoons at the same time that they're going to be doing in-person phone banking. So if you've been curious about phone banking, you're welcome to come to that party and listen in and ask questions. And let's see.
Just so everyone knows, all this information will be in a follow-up email, so you don't have to madly write it down. I don't think we said that.
Yeah, you don't need to take notes. That's a good point. Okay, next slide, please. So letters end at the end of October, really early, a little earlier than that, because the last letter will be mailed on October 29th. So it's time to start thinking, if you've been a letter writer or you start today, what are you going to do when you can't write letters anymore? As Yasmin was just saying, the data has changed a little bit, right? So every contact we have between now and election day, and especially between, the end of letters and election day, that last big push really makes a huge difference. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the other things you can do, the other opportunities for you to get involved. And if it's something you haven't done yet, we'd love to have you. As Yasmin said, sometimes the newer people are even more effective than the people who are have too much information in their heads. So Anne is going to start by telling us about phone banks.
Okay. As mentioned, we really need phone bankers in the coming weeks through election day to get all of our supporters in key swing areas to fill out their ballots. So we have 2 weekly Zoom phone banks calling all of our target areas. All phone banks, as well as all canvases we mentioned, can use Spanish speakers in addition to English speakers, of course. All of our phone banks start with really good training, and there are support people available throughout every call on Zoom to answer all of the questions you come across as you call. So tons of support. But if you feel like a Zoom phone bank is not your thing, as Laura mentioned, they are doing in-person phone banking at the Democratic Volunteer Center. They have many hours, and the hours are always expanding. So go to their website. Again, that website will be in our follow-up email. And that's really conveniently located. It's on the Mountain View Palo Alto border, right near 101, right near Costco. So it's easy for a lot of people to get to. The trainers are on hand the whole time for you throughout that process. And again, all of these events, either in person or on Zoom, start with training. But if you're a newcomer and you feel like you just need a little bit of an extra boost to your confidence, we do have one of our monthly standalone phone bank trainings coming up this Thursday night. It's not required that you attend this if you're a newbie, but it may just give you that boost you need. And finally, just keep your eyes out for information coming soon about the last 4 days of the election. We will be phone banking 8 hours a day. That doesn't mean you have to sign up for 8 hours a day. You can certainly sign up for as many 2-hour shifts as you can in those in those days. It's super fun. Judith lines up all kinds of celebrities to kick off the 2-hour shifts. It's just so high energy, and we're calling from the East Coast to Alaska as the sun travels across the country. It's a blast. And so my plea is that you start phone banking soon so that your skills are really honed by the final push. So next slide. And then now we're going to dive into all of our canvases, which is many. So I just want to list here some of the aspects that apply to all of our canvases. First, like phone banking, all of our canvas events start with an on-site training. If you are new to this and feel like you want a little bit more training before you go, please try one of our weekly canvas orientations. They happen every Tuesday night. Again, not required, but it will give you an extra boost of confidence and knowledge before you go. So again, that link will be coming your way. So for all of our canvases, we try our very best to offer the following services. We try our best to match you into coordinated carpools from the Bay Area or in Arizona. Once you land, we try to help you figure out others you can share rental cars with. We try our best to match solo canvassers with a partner at the meetup site. So don't be hesitant if you are going alone. And also, if you're new and you want to try to be matched with an experienced canvasser once you arrive, we try our best to do that. For our overnight canvases, which is Arizona, Reno, and that farther down in the Central Valley race for Rudy Salas that Yasmin mentioned, we try to give nearby lodging suggestions. We even try to arrange some free housing in local Democrats' homes for travelers travelers who really need that we don't have it for everyone, but if people are on a tight budget, we really are trying to help them keep costs down. And we always try to arrange at least one fun night get together with all the people who have signed up on that trip. As for who we are talking to at the doors, there are sort of two phases remaining. From now until ballots go out, we're trying to make sure we've identified every last person that might support our candidates. So we might be talking to some registered Dems who are infrequent voters or independents, etc. We aren't trying at this point to be persuading diehard Republicans at this point. So you shouldn't be knocking on their doors. Then once ballots go out, as you've heard and probably know, it's called Get Out the Vote. And for like in California, that's October 7th that starts. At that point, from then till election day, we are really just trying to go to the doors of the people we know are supporting our candidates. So at that point, we're sharing the logistics of how, when, and where to get their ballots in. And we certainly don't want to be sharing those logistics with the people who are not supporting our candidates. And finally, I want to point out that we're fairly certain that we will have some weekend buses lined up in the last few weeks of the campaign to go to Reno and the Central Valley. So again, look out for those details coming soon. And now we'll go to
Me.
the next person, I think is
Judith.
Yeah.
Hi. So Arizona, you heard from Yasmin. Arizona is a really important state. So there are 11 electoral votes to put it among the top 15 of all states. And like the other swing states, Arizona is somewhat of a bellwether. 8 of the past 12 presidential election winners also won in Arizona. Abortion and immigration appear poised to play large roles in voter turnout in November. And Arizona has a citizens-initiated measure on the November ballot that will enshrine a right to abortion until fetal viability, typically around 24 weeks. So Swing Left Peninsula and the Bay Area Coalition are planning a field trip to Tucson, Arizona, arriving in Arizona on October 4th, knocking doors on the 5th, 6th, and 7th, and returning on the 8th. We're planning carpools from the airport in Phoenix and have some limited supporter housing available as well. In Tucson, we'll be in the overlap of Congressional District 6, so that's a congressional seat, and 3 different legislative districts, District 16, 17, and 21. We'll be campaigning for down ballot races with candidates who stand a real chance of winning. State Assembly Kevin Volk, for instance, is in Legislative District 17. And then for Congress, Kirsten Engel she came so close 2 years ago, and she can do it this time. And the Senate race, Ruben Gallego as well, of course, Harris Waltz. So we have fun events planned every evening after our full day of canvassing. And we do have, as I mentioned, some supporter housing available. So as Bruce said, the links are not only going to be in chat, but we will send you the links in an email that you will receive in the next couple of days. We can really use your help. Next is Scott to talk about Nevada.
Yeah, hi, everybody. So this is what's at stake in Nevada, 6 very important swing state electoral votes, Jackie Rosen's Senate seat, and like Arizona, an abortion ballot measure. And I think Yasmin mentioned as well, there are some important down ballot seats that are very important as well. So Nevada, right now, most polls are showing it to be a virtual tie. It is, as Kamala Harris said, a game of inches. And so that's where you can come in and really play an important role. Yasmin and Ann talked about identifying supporters, the data that we need, right? Nonpartisan and independent registrations outnumber partisan registrations in Nevada. And so it's very important right now. We're going out to talk to those people, find out who they support, who's supporting us, who's not supporting us. And that information is going to be really important later on near the end of October and in those first few days of November. So we have 4 canvases planned, 4 dates planned for Nevada. There's one this coming weekend. I'm going to Nevada this weekend, to Reno. I still have room in my car, and you can find out, you can ride with me. There are other people who are driving as well who have room, and wherever you are, if you need a ride, we can try to make it work. Then we have the 2 dates in October, and then those very important last few days before the election in the first week of November. So, as noted, if you sign up, we will send you a link to some online training. I will send you also as well some extra material to help you prepare beforehand. You'll be as well prepared as you can before you go. I'll send you a couple of really good videos on how to canvass if you haven't done this before. So find a friend or family member if you can to go with you. I have canvassed with someone as young as 16 years old. If you go alone to Nevada, that's fine too. They will pair you up with someone when you get there on site. And so, yeah, we need you in Nevada. You know, as Ann mentioned, there will be buses running in Nevada beginning, I believe, in mid-October to the 3rd week of October, but that doesn't mean that we don't need you before then. So you can get a little experience before then, and then you can later on, you can hop on one of these buses and go to Reno, which is very purple. I hope to see you in Reno. And so I'm handing off, I think, to Judith again. Is that
Yes.
right? All right.
Yes, and Yasmin talked about how important the 2 legislative districts are that are close to us, to the Bay Area. Knocking on doors is the most important tool to increase voter turnout. Studies have shown that it increases turnout by upwards to 9 to 12 percentage points. And since many elections are won or lost by about 2 voters per neighborhood, knocking on doors makes a huge difference. If you've never canvassed before but want to try a proven way to turn out voters, we offer a class called You Can Canvass every Tuesday, which means this evening, 7 o'clock, shortly after this meeting's over. We go over the soup to nuts of canvassing, including how to use the canvassing app PDI. So looks can be deceiving in California. We think of California as a deep blue state, but there are these 2 congressional districts with Republican incumbents right next door that we can flip blue. CD 13 is only an hour and a half to 2-hour drive from the Bay Area, and we have multiple canvassing sites available every weekend now until the election. As we get closer to November 5th, as a few people have mentioned so far, we will have buses to the area. We're canvassing for Adam Gray, and he is an amazing man. We are also canvassing for Jessica Self for Assembly seat, or Esmeralda Orsario in the other part of the district. We help arrange carpools, and you receive training once you arrive. So even if you don't take the canvassing class, you will get training. We usually knock on about 50 doors and have amazing conversations. The other day I was canvassing in series, and we were looking for the wife, who is a registered Democrat, but the husband, a Republican, answered the door. My partner and I looked at each other and silently asked, should we talk to him? Or should we just say, have a nice day and move on? I started the conversation, and when I got to the part where I asked him, do you think you'd support Adam Gray? He replied, I'm voting Democrat straight down the ballot. So next slide, please. CD22 is a longer trip, so it's worth your while to spend a few days. You can stay overnight or spend 2 nights. Our concierge service is available to all for housing, carpools, and stipends. We offer canvassing every weekend until the elections. And as November 5th nears, we'll have overnight bus trips to CD22. Rudy Salas is the candidate in this district, and he too was an assemblyman before he decided to run for Congress. He learned a lot from his first run in 2022, and this year is running such a good, smart campaign. So let's help these candidates win so that President Harris can have a strong Congress to support her. So next, I believe, is Laura.
Next is thank you. Thank you all for coming. We know that that was a lot of information. So as was mentioned a couple of times, all of it will come to you in a follow-up email with links that you can sign up for. Always, if you have any questions, just email us and we'll get you where you need to go. So I want to thank Yasmin again for coming. That was really inspirational and and strategic, right? I mean, that's why all of us originally got involved with Swing Left. I think when I originally heard their strategy way back when, it made so much sense, and that's something that's never changed. So when you volunteer with this organization, you're putting your time and your money the best place it can go with the highest chance for success. And all of us work really hard on that front. So again, thank you very much for coming. And Yasmin, thank you so much for coming and for coming from the East Coast with, and I'm sure like trying to rush your kids into bed and all of that. So we really, really appreciate it. It was very kind of you. Thank you. And I'm now going to end the official meeting. We're going to stop the recording, and anyone who wants to stay on and chat, we're happy to hear from you.